Thomas Reed was an old man who lived alone on the edge of a quiet countryside town. His small cottage stood beside an empty field where wild grass swayed in the wind. There were no neighbors close enough to hear his footsteps, no children running through the yard, no laughter inside the house. Life had become silent, almost too silent. Years ago, Thomas had a family, a wife who smiled warmly and a son who once looked up to him. But time changed everything. His wife passed away, and his son moved to the city, rarely visiting. Letters came once in a while, short and polite, but they never filled the emptiness. Thomas spent his days working on small tasks, mending broken fences, tending a few vegetables, and sitting by the window watching the sky change colors. He was not unhappy, but he was not truly at peace either. Something inside him always felt unfinished. From a young age, Thomas believed money was the answer to everything. When he was poor, he felt invisible. Others had fine clothes and comfortable homes while he struggled to get by. That difference hurt him. He promised himself that one day he would become wealthy, that he would never feel small again. So he worked hard, harder than most. He saved every penny. He refused unnecessary expenses. He avoided generosity because he believed giving meant losing. Over time, money became his obsession, not just for comfort but for validation, proof that he mattered. Even in old age, when his hands trembled slightly and his steps slowed, the desire for wealth remained. He thought security lay in numbers, bank balances, possessions, and savings. The more he had, the safer he would feel. One chilly morning, while cleaning the old barn behind his cottage, Thomas noticed something strange. A loose wooden plank shifted beneath his foot. Curious, he knelt down and pulled it aside. There, buried in the dirt, was a small metal box. It was old and rusted, as if it had been hidden for decades. Thomas's heart quickened. He carefully lifted it, brushing away soil and dust. The lock was weak, easily broken. When he opened the box, his breath stopped. Inside were coins, golden, heavy, and unmistakably valuable. They were antique pieces, the kind collectors paid fortunes for. Someone had buried them long ago, and now, by chance, they belonged to him. For a moment, Thomas could not move. After years of praying for security, wealth had arrived. The coins gleamed in the dim light of the barn, promising everything he had ever wanted. Freedom from worry, proof of success, a future without fear. He carried the box inside the cottage and placed it on the table. His hands shook slightly, not from excitement, but from uncertainty. Was this real? Could life change so suddenly? That night, he hardly slept. Instead of peace, his mind raced. What if someone knew about the coins? What if they were stolen? What if the government claimed them? What if he made a mistake? The wealth he had dreamed of for decades now felt like a burden. He locked the door twice before sleeping. He checked the box repeatedly. He imagined invisible threats. Days passed. Thomas sold a few coins in a nearby town, exchanging them for money. With that money, he made small improvements to his cottage. A stronger door, a better roof, and new furniture. On the surface, life seemed better, but inside something changed. He stopped visiting the small market where villagers chatted. He avoided conversations. He no longer trusted people. When neighbors greeted him, he responded briefly and walked away. Suspicion grew in his thoughts like weeds. Are they talking about me? Do they want something? Can I trust them? The joy he once found in simple things disappeared. Morning tea tasted the same, but it no longer comforted him. The sunrise over the fields was still beautiful, yet he barely noticed. His family heard about the improvements to his home and visited more often. His son asked polite questions, how he was doing, whether he needed help. But Thomas sensed something in his son's eyes. Not concern alone, but curiosity. "Father, you seem well," his son said one afternoon. "Have you been investing or doing something different?" It was an innocent question, but Thomas hesitated. He imagined explaining the coins, imagined questions he could not answer, imagined losing what he had found. "I am managing," he replied quietly. The visit ended soon after. Alone again, Thomas stared at the metal box. He counted the remaining coins once, twice, then a third time. Numbers became his focus. How much was left? How long would it last? Could he get more? Greed, subtle and silent, had begun to grow. He locked the box inside a hidden compartment. He checked it every night. He dreamed of increasing his wealth. Not for security anymore, but for more. More money. More proof. More control. Yet the more he pursued, the less he felt at peace. One winter evening, a storm arrived. Rain battered the windows and wind howled outside. Thomas sat alone by the fireplace, holding the box in his hands. The coins inside clinked softly. Suddenly, a sharp pain struck his chest. It was sudden and frightening. His breath shortened. The room seemed to spin. The box slipped from his hands, spilling coins across the wooden floor. He collapsed. For a brief, terrifying moment, everything became clear. He had spent his life chasing wealth, believing it would solve his problems. But when it arrived, it created new ones: fear, suspicion, and distance from the people he loved. The real enemy had never been poverty. It had been greed. Poverty had not stolen his happiness. Greed had. Money had not given him peace. Wisdom had not yet arrived. Thankfully, the storm passed. Thomas survived, though the experience changed him. The next morning, he looked at the scattered coins and felt something different. Not excitement. Relief. He realized he no longer wanted to live in constant worry. He sold the remaining gold and used the money to help the local community, repairing the village hall and supporting families in need. He kept enough to live comfortably, but not enough to obsess over. More importantly, he changed the way he lived. He visited neighbors. He shared stories. He laughed again. He appreciated small moments. Peace returned slowly, like sunlight after a long winter. In old age, Thomas understood a truth many people overlook. Wealth is not measured by possessions but by contentment. A person can own much and feel empty, or own little and feel whole. The hidden enemy is not outside us. It lives within greed, comparison, and the endless desire for more. Thomas once prayed for gold. In the end, he found wisdom instead, and that became his greatest treasure. Please subscribe to my channel.